Good day, everyone. Today we are going to have a look at the financial sector of India and its history since independence. This is the second video in a two-part series on introduction to India's financial sector history. And here we will be looking at what happened to the Indian financial sector after India's independence and how we have reached the state of financial liberalization that we are in currently. So let's get started. By about 1969, all of the commercial banks that existed as on 1951 were financially extremely stressed. About 85% of them had already been amalgamated or they had collapsed and they no longer existed. This was a serious issue that had come up in India's financial sector, and there had to be some drastic action to deal with this major problem. 85% of all commercial banks collapsing or getting amalgamated is not a good sign of the financial health of a country. So, some drastic action was needed, and drastic action was carried out. It was in the form of nationalization of banks. 14 top banks were first nationalized in one single shot, and then this was followed up by another series of nationalizations, which took over six more banks. After this, government controlled more or less 91% of the entire deposits that were existing in India's banking sector. So almost all of the deposits and the money that was deposited with the banks became government property overnight. And in the insurance sector, there was not much change. After incorporation of LIC, it continued to be the monopoly and it continued to be the only life insurer till the year 2000 when the sector was opened up and private players started coming in. Even today, LIC is a very massive organization and is the preeminent insurer in India. As far as the stock markets were concerned, the controller of capital issues was the agency which dealt with controlling the markets, and CCI played a very significant role in how market for stocks was regulated, and it did a lot to stifle the growth of stock markets by putting arbitrary controls, arbitrary by today's standards, that is, the controls which may have seemed right at the time, but in the long run caused a lot of difficulty for the promoters of private enterprises in raising capital. Eventually, Securities and Exchange Board of India or SEBI, which is the primary regulator for stock markets in India today, was established. This happened in 1988, and then onwards we started gradual liberalization and things became better. What you can see at the bottom of your screen are actual physical stock certificates that got issued long ago. In earlier days, people used to trade in stocks using physical shares, that is, material shares. So these are like regular certificates which people used to transfer from one person to the other as a proof of holding stock of that particular company. Now, however, things have changed. Now you have trading happening only through demat accounts or dematerialized accounts, and paper shares are no longer traded. However, even with all this nationalization and government control over insurance, banking, and stock market, things were not going very well. If you look at this data, which is available from the World Bank, you can have a look at this link that is given at the bottom. You will find a lot of informative material in the World Bank's data. It's free for access, anybody can use that. So if you have a look at this, you can just have a look at what happened to the economies of the United States, which is given in green, and the economy of India, which is given in blue. You can see they started with a small gap, obviously, because US was an independent country long before India became one. So they were at a higher level. But from about 1975 onwards, the United States economy kind of started to grow very, very rapidly. At the same time, India's growth was more or less stagnant. And the growth remained more or less stagnant till 1990, when we had a major issue, which we will be talking about in the next couple of minutes. So the idea that I wanted to show you from this graph is that we started off not much worse when compared to United States, but because of the government regulations and the possible outcome of that as discouraging the industries, the growth rate was very poor. So we could never match our potential till about 1990. And what happened in 1990 and how did we come to this situation is what we are going to see in this section of the video. We go into the phase 3 of our Indian financial sector's history, which is liberalization. In 1990, we had reached a situation where the government was very close to a default, which meant that the government could not keep the promises of paying back the loans that it had taken. India was in such a bad situation that it could barely finance about 3 weeks' worth of imports. As a consequence of that, India had to pledge 20 tons of gold to Union Bank of Switzerland and about 47 tons to the Bank of England as a collateral. Newspapers of the time reported on this extensively, but the government had no way other than to agree to the bailout package that was suggested by the International Monetary Fund. So, the two people who actually played a major role in ensuring that the economic reforms were pushed through were these two people, uh, the Prime Minister of the time, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, and Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was his finance minister at the time. So these two people are considered to be largely responsible for the beginning of the liberalization era that ushered a lot of prosperity for a lot of Indians. Now let's jump straight into the current state of Indian financial sector. We have classified the Indian financial institutions as on today as banks. First category is banks. So banks are of multiple types. Commercial banks, for example, Axis, SBI, HDFC Bank, all these are scheduled commercial banks that can issue loan, ask for deposits, and do all kind of commercial activities that are possible to be carried out within the ambit of RBI guidelines. The second category of banks are cooperative banks. Cooperative banks are not as strictly controlled as the proper scheduled banks, but they are designed to cater to people whose credit history may not be that good, or to help people who are in the lower income group, such as farmers, etc. etc. So we have cooperative banks also. An example can be the Tamil Nadu State Apex Cooperative Bank Limited. There are several other cooperative banks which are in existence in different parts of the country. And the third category of banks that are most common are the new banks. For example, the payment banks and small finance banks. Some common examples include the Airtel Payments Bank, the Paytm Payments Bank, and the India Post Payments Bank. They are a totally different category of banks in that they are not allowed to operate like regular banks, but they can issue debit cards and they can take deposits up to 1 lakh rupees at the maximum. Then we have the separate category of institutions which are called non-banks. Uh, in this, the insurance comes in. So now you have, in addition to LIC, you have companies like Prudential ICICI, you have Aviva Life Insurance, you have HDFC Life, SBI Life, etc. There are several players in the insurance sector right now. All this came about because of the liberalization in the insurance sector in the year 2000. However, LIC still remains a major player. The second category of non-banking institutions are mutual funds. The largest player in the market is HDFC Mutual Fund. And then you have funds like Kotak Mutual Fund, Franklin Templeton, and there are several other players who uh, are involved in buying and selling stocks on behalf of individual, which in other terms is called a mutual fund. The third category of banks is the NBFCs or non-banking financial companies. These include companies like Manappuram Finance Limited, which primarily specializes in gold loans. You have companies like Tata Capital and Bajaj Finserv, etc., which can offer deposits and which can issue loans, etc., etc. So these are governed by a different set of RBI regulations, and they are supposed to follow those. So they are not exactly as commercial banks. The last category of non-banking institutions are pension funds and primary dealers. One example of a primary dealer is ICICI Securities primary dealership. So these are companies which buy debt directly from the government. So they buy government securities directly from the government and sell it to people. So that is why they are called the primary dealers. So these are the broad category of financial institutions that exist in India as on today. We will be having a look at almost all of these individual institutions one by one in the next few videos. So thank you for watching, and we will have a discussion on one aspect of these financial institutions in the next video. Thank you.